because the government of India did not yield to the demands, particularly of the nationalist congressmen, and they had demanded the reversing of the decision on partition of Bengal. Since government did not do it, they included boycott as also a program of the Swadeshi movement. It had, in a way, I don't say that it was a very successful movement, but it had definitely a significant impact on the economy of the country because the uh, market for the British manufactured goods in the Indian markets dwindled considerably. It did, create an impression among the British that it was not always correct to antagonize the Indian people because it is not just the leaders whom they are opposing, but it is the economy itself um, which is being subject to tremendous pressure, and it was also resulting in losses both to the British government and also British manufacturers and industrialists who had invested lots of capital on developing the industries in the country and developing industries in England, which they were exporting to Indian markets, right? So it definitely had an impact. Then in the 1906, what happened was the Muslim deputation to the Governor General Lord Minto, who, while reacting to the representation of the Muslim delegation, assured that their interests would be protected more than what it had been earlier. That means a kind of an official divide and rule policy was now being adopted, and in 1909, through the Minto-Morley reforms, they injected the political communal venom by conceding separate electorates to the Muslim League. This was the first official, political wedge that was driven between between the relations of Hindus and the Muslims, which went on to widen. And it was only Lucknow Pact in 1914, which again brought them together in the context of the Khilafat issue that was coming up at the international level. Gandhiji entered India in 1915 from South Africa, and it was Gandhiji through his extensive tour and study of Indian society, particularly the rural part, who was able to understand where India lay. It was not just in the metropolitan cities and towns of India, but it was among the peasants, among the labor, and among the tribals and the Dalits, who constituted really majority of the Indian population. And moreover, the force that they were to fight was a very formidable force because it was an empire which had not seen the sun set. An empire where the sun did not set was an empire against which the Indian nationalist forces had to fight. So he wanted to take everyone into confidence and bring them into the national movement so that the movement itself became strong. And when the Khilafat issue came, Khilafat issue also was made a part of the Indian national struggle, and it said that the Congress would stand one with the Khilafat issue and participate in the Khilafat movement. That is how the Khilafat non-cooperation issue was developed. And in Lucknow in 1914, the League and the Congress joined together, and there they signed the Lucknow Pact, declaring that they would fight for Swaraj. Swaraj is their aim. And then, as a part of it, the Khilafat issue should be addressed, and the British, who had promised that no injustice would be done to the Muslims of this country and their religious sentiment, should stand by their word and then leave alone the cause of trade. leave alone the caliphate. So this was how, they came together. And Gandhiji from 1915 to 1919 toured the entire country, and he was able to understand the real issues that are confronting Indian in the context of they being ruled by the colonial powers. So the British government, with the end of the war, announced the Rowlatt Bill, which was intended to suppress the rising national sentiments, to counter the rising nationalist sentiment, and also the rising, militant activity of some of the nationalists, brought in the Rowlatt Bills to curb it, to empower itself to deal with such anti-colonial activities firmly. Gandhiji was definitely incensed with the response of the British government. Instead of granting whatever the Indians wanted, the British government was wanting to suppress the nationalist forces. So Gandhi then hit upon the idea of what is now known as the non-cooperation movement. Satyagraha, which he had tried in South Africa to whatever extent it was now tried in India. So South, um, which of course had its own problems. Even among the nationalist forces, there were at least three factions led by one by Satyamurthy and um, Kasturi Rangayangar, another one by Rajgopalachari, who are fighting amongst themselves to take control of the Congress organization. But by this time, there also arose what I have already described as the discontent, dissatisfaction of the majority of the people in South, that they were being dominated by very few people, and that they were unable to harness or get whatever they really deserved. They, gathered together in 1916 to form what is known as the South Indian Liberal Federation, which we shall discuss in detail later. The Congress now was in three groups, as I suggested, and everyone wanted to take control of it. And Home Rule movement, which had been started earlier, was now in jitters because the home rulers now uh, no longer wanted to take their method of fighting colonialism definitely was different from the methodology that Gandhiji adopted and he wanted to promote in India. His struggle was mainly based on truth and non-violence, Satya and Ahimsa, and for which not many, including Rajgopalachari, who was supposed to be his southern commander, as he himself called him, and at a time, at one time he was even called the conscience keeper of Gandhiji. Let me not go into details of the kind of controversy that was there with regard to Rajaji's changing taste. But one thing is certain, at least till 1920, Rajgopalachari was a staunch Tilak. Tilak was not a great sympathizer of Gandhiji because Tilak's politics are somewhat militant, radical, if not extremist. So he did not quite agree with Gandhiji's non-violent, non-cooperation. He was a little critical of it. And many thought that it was not going to be a very useful method to counter the very strong British. In any case, by 1920, Gandhi was able to win over the people because of his self-denying attempts and struggles he launched at Champaran, Kheda, and Ahmedabad. So he was able to drive home the fact that he was the real leader of the Indian nation. And he was not leader of a faction, and he had no interest, vested interest of his own. and he was not trying to protect the interest of any one particular group. This is what, generally the feeling was. So Gandhi emerged as the leader of the country, and of course by 1921 he was being referred to as Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji had addressed Telugus and Tamils apart from Biharis in South Africa. A large number of, you know, immigrants in South Africa belong to Madras presidency, a large number of them. So when he visited Madras on the invitation of Rajgopalachari, Kasturanga Iyengar, and um, um, Rangaswamy Iyengar, the three Iyengars from Madras, he writes in his autobiography that I thought that I have a special right over the Telugus and the Tamils, which means that he had fought, for the rights of all Indian immigrants in South Africa, and Tamils and Telugus formed a large chunk of immigrant population in South Africa. So he felt at home. This is what he writes. He felt at home in particularly South India. He, along with the Ali brothers, Shaukat Ali and Muhammad Ali, who were leaders of the Khilafat movement, visited South India, toured the entire region, and he was able to get lots of support. It's not that he was not known in South India, because as early as 1897, his name was there in the press, and in 1911, many South Indians proposed that Gandhi should become the president of the Congress. All this was there. Gandhi was known, at least in the politically active circles. Now, when he came down to South on a tour as a member of the Congress, naturally, he was received with great enthusiasm, despite the fact that there was no unity among the leaders. So, Gandhi's visit actually enthused many of them. The leaders were able to, sink their differences, at least temporarily. And in 1920, when Gandhi came and addressed a public meeting in the Marina Beach, Madras, more than 1 lakh people heard him silently. Most of them unlettered, very, very poor people who had assembled on the Marina, Madras. So it naturally drew home the point that Gandhi was a real mass leader. And it was a record in the history of public meetings all over the world by then. Nowhere such a huge gathering had assembled. See, that was a kind of anti-colonial feeling that the common mass of people had developed by then. They did not care for the local leaders. Gandhi had a messianic, message to deliver. So that was the response, and it was here in South, sitting in the house of Rajaji, that they innovated the word Harthal. And there were three people, Kasturanga Iyengar, Rajgopalachari, and Gandhiji, in that late night meeting in Rajaji's place, where they hit on the idea of Harthal. So we'll observe Harthal on 28th of March. Then it was postponed to April 4th, 1921. So this is how the Hartal weapon was used, and we know the kind of response it got from different parts of the country. And of course, the Delna-Warabag massacre, as it happened later. And with these things in their harmony, in 1921, the Nagpur Congress met. It was here that the resolution on non-cooperation was accepted. Apart from the resolution on non-cooperation, it was also resolved that there shall be linguistic Congress committees formed in different parts of the country. So the Tamil Nadu is, Tamil Nadu Congress Committee, Andhra Congress Committee, Karnataka Congress Committee, like this. Maharashtra Congress Committee, like this, regional linguistic Congress committees came into existence, and that naturally strengthened the movement. So for the first time, a national organization like Congress had agreed on linguistic provinces. Linguistic provinces. And that naturally brought in more and more number of people into the cadres of the Indian National Congress. So, and non-cooperation resolution was accepted. And it is not so much the leaders themselves, because as a part of non-cooperation, we had other programs like Hindu-Muslim unity, abolition of untouchability, removal of untouchability, and then promotion of Hindi and Khadi. Khadi is a part of Swadeshi. So that was how the program was started. The positive side of it was, these programs that I just mentioned. And negative side of it is not to cooperate with the British, boycott the British government, boycott the course, boycott the school. This was what it was. See, interestingly, in the South, the people who went to the higher education institutions belonged to the upper crest of the society. And then high schools also, it was mostly the upper class, upper caste people. Boycott of the schools was minimal. Boycott of the government was nil. Yes, courts were boycotted by a few people. Courts were boycotted, but government was not boycotted, because the import of the non-cooperation movement was that no Indian should cooperate with the British government for its continuance. But that did not happen. See, the opposition to this resolution was such that Rajaji himself, said it shall be a progressive abstention from government. That means that we are not suddenly going to cease cooperation with the government. Step by step. Step by step we will go. So they had to take into consideration the sentiments of the local people to the program that Gandhiji and Congress had announced as a part of the non-cooperation Khilafat movement. And we know that what happened in Chauri Chaura, and Gandhi had to suspend this movement. That's how it continued, and the 1930s witnessed the Great Depression, as we all know. And naturally, the major event that took place during that period was the roundtable conferences, Simon Commission and roundtable conferences. And Gandhiji presented himself, but the problem was that nobody was able to unite the leadership, Indian leadership, to take a particular, a united stand about what India really wants. That was not to be, because the British had their own agenda. The British, through their own machinations, were able to divide the Indian leader. And there, people uh, put forth different opinions and different wants of their own. See, there was the bloc of the native princes, constituting around 40% of India. And there was a Muslim League, which claimed that we represent 30% of the Indian population. And there were Dalits, untouchable community represented by Ratamalai Srinivasan and Ambedkar in the Roundtable Conference. And outside it was M.C. Raja, Manish Swami, and so many others were there, who did not see eye to eye with what Congress boycotted the first Roundtable Conference. It attended the second, and Gandhi was the sole representative of the Indian National Congress, but there nothing could emerge. No unanimity was there. Ultimately, they came out. And after the third roundtable conference, second roundtable conference, there was a problem of this separate electorates, which ultimately uh, resulted in signing of the Pune Pact between Ambedkar and Gandhian followers. After that, it was the civil disobedience movement that was launched by Gandhi in 1933, but that went on, yes, but it was not so effective as it could be because of the divisions within the Indian society. And 1935 Act came, and there were elections to the provincial councils in 1935. Provincial autonomy had been in place, And Congress formed governments in 7 states, 7 provinces, and Muslim League in 3 provinces. But the declaration of First World War and the unilateral announcement by the British Prime Minister that India will be a party to the Second World War to support the British allies led to a lot of discontent among the Indian nationalists, and they said that we are resigning and we are going to start another mass movement against the British government. They wanted that if they want India, if India has to support the British ally, they should straight away announce that you are going to have an interim national government, and they shall also, before the cessation of hostilities in Europe, you will have the right to elect your own constituent assembly and draft a constitution. This was the demand, but British government was in no mood to accept this, and this led to resignation of the Congress ministries, and then actually Indian opinion was again divided. But still, Gandhi uh, was certain. He was just sympathetic to the democratic forces against the Nazi fascist forces. But ultimately, India's interest was what was most important. He wanted to, protect the interests of Indians first, and then, of course, fight the forces that were likely to attack India. So, many, of course, the Cripps mission came, and the Cripps mission offered something which was not acceptable, but they were not prepared to hand over the administration of the country, which was the minimum demand of the Congress, to the nationalist forces. They would say, no, Muslim League is opposing, this group is opposing, that group is opposing. Yes, there were conflicting demands. Muslim League wanted in 1940, in the Lahore session, they had resolved on partition. India is a two-nation, continent. It should be divided into two. One should go to the Muslim League, and the other one to Congress, etc. And there are demands, from people like MC Raja and not MC Raja, Ratamale Srinivasan and Ambedkar, that the separate electorates for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes should be guaranteed, and there are certain amendments should be brought to the social religious code in this country. These are all demands, but ultimately this was not acceptable, though British knew that it was not possible for them to continue the war, and also their administration in the country, in the absence of cooperation from the Indians, particularly Indian National Congress and Gandhi. This was known. And despite the fact that the many nationalists within the Congress were not really for launching the Quit India movement, Gandhi, was able to feel the pulse of the people and declare Quit India in 1942. September, um, uh, the Quit India movement was declared. August. It is also called the August Revolution. And see, the nation erupted as one. All the leaders, of course, had been put behind bars. And still, the entire Indian nation, barring a few groups, participated in the Quit India movement. And it became very clear for the British that we are not going to continue here because it is simply impossible. The cost of the administration, and when the bureaucracy is not supporting you, the military, because the uh, uh, naval ratings in Bombay revolted against the British. The army and the police refused to take action against those who are participating in this satyagrahas of the Quit India movement. So it became evident that it was simply impossible for the British. Then happened what is known as this particular the coming, including Cripps, and then the Mountbatten Plan, and India ultimately became independent. See, in all this exercise, I prefer to give a lot of credit to the people of the South India. People of the South. Leaders were confused. They were not clear whether they should be in this group, that group, or some other group. So it was the people who made this movement the real mass movement. And they believed particularly in the national leadership. They believed in the national leadership, not the coteries or cliques that we have in different parts of the state. And it is because of a large scale participation of students, labor and peasants. The freedom struggle, freedom movement all over the country was able to be successful, and more so in South, which was riven with lots of factionalism within the Congress and also outside the Congress, opposite to the Congress. See, these people, majority of the people were opposite to the Congress, not because it was Congress, but it was led by their exploiters. We don't want to be in the Congress because these fellows who are leading the Congress are exploiters. They are the people who are discriminating against. This was the attitude. But when Gandhiji entered the scene, see, and with his programs of national education, Muslim unity, and removal of untouchability, all of them joined. All of them joined, and they had that kind of hope. Moreover, the British administration, so long as it was semi-hegemonic, they could be here because they also had the support of the influential sections of the Indian society. Once they felt where they have lost the support of the influential sections of the Indian society, they decided that we have no place here, we have to quit. They quit and left. So I don't say any particular reason was more important, but all people generally participated in this struggle. And they had blind faith in the leadership. They had blind faith in the leadership. If not the local leadership, the leadership at the national level. So, 1930 onward, people who are there in the non-Brahmin parties, Dalit parties, they all went over to the national movement led by Gandhiji. They may not have become members of the Congress, but certainly they were part of the Quit India movement and the civil disobedience movement that was launched under his leadership. That is how India was able to become, free in 1947. I think I will stop here my lecture, then go on to the next one, that is about the backward class movement, which was contemporaneous to freedom struggle in Karnataka. While talking about the beginnings of nationalism in the country, I have also referred to some kind of discontent among some educated sections of the Shudra and Dalit communities about the dominance of the public sphere by people belonging to particularly the upper caste of Indian society. And this was more pronounced particularly in the south because, as Vivekananda pointed out, South India is a region which is not only caste ridden, but it is also Brahmin ridden. Swami Vivekananda makes this comment. It's the most Brahmin-ridden country in the Brahmin-ridden region in the country. This is the statement that Vivekananda has made, visiting southern India in 1893 and 94. Before and after he went to Chicago for the Parliament of World Religion. Then the first reaction I have already mentioned about a periodical called the Kur Chandrika in 1873, which wrote about the dominance of one particular community over the public sphere. and particularly the government services, whether it was in Madras, Travancore, Hyderabad, Karnataka, Mysore, wherever it was, more than 75% of the positions, whether it is clerk, officer, whatever, including divans, they were all held by the Brahmin community. And similarly, in the Madras presidency also, uh, majority of them belong to one particular group. And, see, naturally, people who were educated and in the public sphere from these communities, they thought, that it was, really undesirable. What does the British government say? British government says that we are here to, do justice to all classes of people, but they are not doing it. Their policies are benefiting only a few people in the country. This is one point. Secondly, they also pointed out that who is paying the maximum amount of taxes in this country? It is the landlords. It's the traders. Do the landlords and the traders belong to this particular community which has been dominating the public sphere in this country? And then about the Congress itself, they started asking, how is it that you are not addressing problem of hunger? How is it that you are not addressing the problem of illiteracy, health, and about the general welfare of the majority of the people? And you say that you are a national organization. What kind of national organization? Is it of a few people from select urban centers of this country? Or should it also include majority of the people who are there in rural areas, living in the slums, being illiterate, half-fed, exploited? Well, this was a natural grievance. And yes, you say Swadeshi. Swadeshi of whom? Who are the Swadeshis? We are all Swadeshis. What benefit are we going to get from your movement? And you oppose the British. Okay, fine. Why are you opposing the British? We do not want the rule of a particular community here in the place of the British. Ambedkar very clearly said it. Swaraj does not mean, transfer of power from the British into the Brahmin hands. Ambedkar wrote like this. And naturally, they were peeved at being discriminated. And, the British government, they were more less status quo. They did not want to do anything that would stir the dominant communities against colonial administration in this land. So, whatever they did, they simply accepted the conditions as they prevailed in the country. Very, very rarely, wherever, it was found to be most inhuman, like, say, burning of widows, sati system. Yes, they did it because the British Parliament insisted that such practices cannot go. They cannot go on. And they also agreed to bring in, to regularize, legalizing widow remarriages in 1856. Because that was also not just a national issue, it was an international issue. The basic human rights are denied. But still, they did not abolish untouchability. They did not abolish untouchability because they thought that by abolishing untouchability, they'll be, directly making people who believe in this truth race against the, British government. They did not want to take that kind of risk. So these were all there, and people naturally, when Congress did not address itself about these issues, naturally, felt disgusted. So they were not supporting the Congress, at least in the initial stages, uh, in any case, because they thought that it is an organization of the upper class, protecting the interests of the landlord, big business, and also supporting the British government. So by supporting this organization, we are not going to get any benefits out of it. We want an organization which takes into account the grievances of the majority of the people in this country and then fight for the redressal of those grievances. Otherwise, we are not. It will be like, in fact, one of the papers, Parayan wrote, contributing the Congress funds. When Congress made, an appeal for funds to organize the first session of the Congress in Madras in 1887, the Parayan wrote, it is contributing to Congress funds will be like feeding milk to the cobra, who, after drinking the milk offer, will bite the fellow who offers it, milk. This is what, the attitude was. And when Congress, passed a resolution that simultaneous examination of the Indian Civil Service examination should be held in England and India in 1887, the parent wrote, we don't want it because we do not want to be ruled by the upper classes of this country in the place of British. British sense of justice and fair play we believe in, not the Brahmin sense of justice and fair play. This was the attitude. So all this culminated in uh, starting of caste associations all over South India. See, number of associations, almost every community which represented about 2 to 3% of the population in any region came into existence. See, the Vellalar Sangam, the Brahmin Mahasabha, the Veerashaiva Mahasabha, Reddy Jana Sangam, Kamma Jana Sangam, and then Lingayat Fund Education Association, Vakkaligara Sangha, Central Mohammedan Association. Like this, community-wise organizations came into being. They started coming into being in the late 1890s, and by 1920, each and every community had organizations of their own. The Paraya Mahajana Sabha, Adi Dravida Abhiruddhi Sangam, the Mala Mahasangam, like this, all communities came not together themselves, but community caste organizations came into being. And all these caste leadership certainly was for democratization of the Congress itself. Why Congress is led by only a few people? Why others are not given entry and given leadership positions there? They have vested interest. So, we do not want to be a part of the Congress. Congress is an exploiter. On the other hand, British government is giving grants to schools and they are allowing us to get admitted to schools. And gradually, they are also bringing in some legislation to provide opportunities for people of different community to enter the services, government services. So when that is the case, why should we oppose the government? These people are, as it is, opposed to us. Should we antagonize the British also? How can you fight two enemies? And the fellow, my neighbor who exploits me day in and day out, is more dangerous and deserves to be fought against first than the fellow who is away in Delhi or in Madras. We need not fight. We can take on one of our enemies first. Our first enemy should be the internal exploiter. This was the attitude of many of the leaders of the caste associations which came. That is how the South Indian Liberal Federation came into being in 1915. T.M. Nair, P.T. Tyagaraja Chetty, they were the founders of the South Indian Liberal Federation. They also started a mouthpiece of this party called the Justice, and this party is popularly known as the Justice Party in South India. There were branches and, of course, autonomous non-Brahmin group association in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, in Kerala, and also Andhra. See, that is how the backward class movement, in a loose sense of the term, started in the country, and they started making demands of the government. It was bringing pressure both on the government and also on the Congress. The government yielded to an extent because they wanted to turn these backward classes against the rising tide of nationalism led by the Congress. See, this is a very peculiar, piquant situation for the Congress also. And they would depend upon the government and support indirectly colonialism against nationalism and freedom struggle if we don't accommodate their aspirations. So that was how Gandhi was very conscious of it. In 1924, when the Congress session was held in Belgaum, Karnataka, but that was the only session that he presided over. He had invited all groups, whether it was the Justice Party, whether it was the Namshudra Association, or Brahmanetar Parishad, all these organizations, Muslim League, and then unification, linguistic, movements of different, places were invited to Belgaum. They held their, conferences separately and also together to arrive at some kind of consensus. It was there, Gandhi calls upon people to accommodate the aspirations of the majority of the people. You have to accommodate, because if you want to build a nation, without the majority of these people, you can't build up a nation. You can't build up a national movement. You can't, encounter a very powerful system. That's colonialism. So he appealed to people. And he also said, that, yes, these are not created over a period of just a few months. They have a history of thousands of years, this discrimination. Yes, we should go. We should work for its removal. Discrimination based on caste, gender, all this should go. So that was how he was able to, in a way, convince, and it was not by his speeches, but by his actions. Because Gandhi started, going to the Harijan Vadas, Dalit quarter. He would insist that unless Dalits are allowed to enter the temples, he wouldn't go to any temple. So that's how, through his action, he was able to build up confidence among the deprived sections of the community. And that is how, generally, people started getting attracted towards the uh, Congress and Gandhi gradually. And coming to the movement itself and its the benefits that it was able to get, Madras issued the GO, communal GO. And then in 1922, Mysore government had appointed a committee in 1918 called the Miller Committee. And the report which was pending there because of opposition from within the higher echelons of the bureaucracy, now in 1922 was released, placed before the Representative Assembly and the Council. And finally, the GO was issued implementing the Miller Committee report, ensuring reservation for the backward classes. Madras had implemented it without, of course, any report, but Mysore government was the first to appoint a backward classes commission based on the report, implement reservations for the downtrodden communities in the state. So, backward classes ultimately was able to impress upon the Congress to relax and become more democratic by accommodating the aspirations of the majority of the people. Only then it can be called a national movement. And only then you will have the moral right to say we stand on equality, path of equality, and we want Britain to treat us as their equals within the empire. This is what Baba Sahib Ambedkar was always saying. It is not enough if you demand equality from the British. You should also treat your own neighbor as your equal. That is the real equality. That is the real freedom. You want to enjoy freedom and you want to deny it to your neighbor. That is not correct. You don't allow him even to draw water from the public wells. You don't even allow him to come anywhere near you. Is this equality? So it is the movement which ultimately forced all forces in the country to accommodate their rising aspiration, and credit goes to several leaders, starting from Ayathidas in Madras presidency, Murugesan Pillai, here. Then Ratamale Srinivasan, MC Raja, Maniswamy from Tamil Nadu, and Narayan Guru from Kerala. And there were lots of people, from Andhra, Uno Satnarayana, and so many others. And from Karnataka itself, Murugeshan Pillai, Chandigram, a host of others. They were responsible for, and the intellectual kind of support was provided by. I'm not sure if this name is quite popular among people who study about backward class movement and national movement in South India. Kattamanchi Ramalingareddy, a great ideologue who gave ideology of the backward class movement in the South. He was the one who successfully countered the theory of merit and deficiency that was propounded and put forth opposing backward class and Dalit reservations in the country. He said, what kind of merit are you speaking about? You are talking about clerical merit and clerical intelligence. Was Churchill a graduate? No, he was not even a matriculate, but he became a great general. He led the country during difficult times. Then, was Abraham Lincoln a graduate? No, he was not a graduate. Like this, he took examples. He took examples and said, what is important is the kind of opportunity that is provided, the kind of environment that you create for people belonging to these groups to come out, to blossom. What I am talking about is national efficiency and national merit. It is not merit of a few clerks. If you want the nation to progress, if you want the nation, to be really merited, it should be the efficiency of the entire society, efficiency of the majority of the people, which you should encourage. Otherwise, the nation will not progress. So this is the kind of merit, this is the kind of efficiency that we need. So he was the one who gave a theory of what we now call as social justice and protective discrimination. And he genuinely wanted that when backward classes movement was going on, the Dalits should form a part of it. And they should be treated as a group which required more and more attention and support. So you need to do this. This is what C.R. Reddy was able to do. And of course, he was a very great man, influenced both by the West and also revolutionaries like Aurobindo. He first was in Baroda uh, in the Sayajirao College. Then he came to Mysore as a professor in the Maharaja's College, became the um, Inspector General of Education. And it was also he who wrote this educational memorandum uh, starting 1,000 primary schools, government primary schools, all over the country for a period of 5 years. That is 5,000 primary schools, so that each population of around 350 people will get a primary school grant with full grants from the government. This is the report that he gave, and also scholarships. All backward classes and untouchable communities and girls should get free education. That's what he thought of, and in fact, when he was here, he declared education up to middle school level free for everybody, up to middle school, free for everyone, and then for untouchable, till they complete their matriculation, no fee shall be collected. Not a single pay should be collected from. These are some of the inclusive practices that are indulged in, and thanks to the Maharaja of Mysore, Nalwadi Krishnaraj Vadiyar, who was equally a great believer in social justice, and they were all there, to support the grievances of uh, the aspirations of the people who really, deserve, who really require this kind of protective discrimination from the state, to improve themselves and to participate in the advancement of their society and state. This is how, and let me tell you, backward class women, I am must add, is a great phenomenon, particularly of South India, 20th century South India. And it was later that it spread to other parts of the country. It was not a very strong movement, in the early 20th century. It started in South and spread to other parts of the country. This is how backward class movement, by organizing itself, was able to bring pressure both on the state and on the nationalist forces to accommodate more or less the demands of the backward classes, Dalits, and women. I do not want to go into the demerits of the different backward class organizations that came into being, which of course are now also multiplying with reservation, internal reservations, that there's so many things are there. But those days, I'm broadly speaking, but to further efforts, I don't think, the constitution would have taken the shape that it has taken in 1950. Be it the position of women, be it the position of the backward classes, be it the position of the Dalits and minorities in this country. Credit should go to the backward class movement in the South, which later went on to other parts of the country. I think I'll stop here in the next maybe 10